Hi, and welcome to a talk about happiness. My name is Miguel Figueiredo, and I'm an executive coach who specializes in helping successful leaders and high achievers to get even better through behavioral change. Now, you might wonder, of all the people in the world, why am I, an executive coach, be talking about happiness? After all, I'm not a Buddhist monk or a priest for all that matter. I'm not a neuroscientist or a psychologist either. I'm not even any kind of new wave spiritual leader, as you can easily perceive. So why would I be talking about happiness? Because since I began coaching executives, the topic of happiness has come around with most of my clients. In fact, it has been the most common topic of all. That led me to wanting to understand more about happiness and with a scientific perspective. I wanted to be able to find or develop tools to help my clients in their quest. Tools that were based in more than just my judgment or curiosity. So I resorted to science. I went through courses on positive psychology, which studies happiness, and dug for research made in happiness-related issues. From all that, two major conclusions came across almost immediately. The first one was that this is a fairly recent topic of interest when it comes to science. Only in the 90s, we see a growing amount of research in this field. The second is that there is a strong correlation between success and happiness, but it's not the one we expected. Traditionally, we think about success and happiness in these terms. If I am successful and I achieve my goals, I will become happy. But that doesn't happen. The reason because it doesn't happen is that we do feel a little bit happier when we immediately achieve our goals, but we start thinking about new ones and then everything becomes all over. So the sense of happiness is rather ephemeral. So success doesn't necessarily lead to happiness. But that is not to say a relationship does not exist. In fact, it does exist and is quite the opposite. It is people that are happier that are likelier to achieve success. Only with an increase of 3% in happiness level, it is sufficient to dramatically increase the chances of success in achieving your goals. And this happens because of a very natural reason. The impact of happiness is not just in your own mood. It reflects in all sorts of capabilities that are vital to us in order to achieve success. It allows us to become more creative. It increases our engagement and motivation. It boosts our productivity. It allows us to stick with projects for longer periods, and it gives us better health, get us more into shape, and it improves relationships, so it improves teamwork as well. So there are a lot of positive outcomes from increasing one's happiness, and not just at the personal level. These advantages are as well at the corporate level. Before we move on, it is important to make sure that when we are talking about happiness, we are all thinking about the same thing. So, what is happiness? We are not talking about hakuna matata, being happy all the time. It's not about satisfying every single need one has. It is fairly easy to understand that by buying stuff, people just don't get happier. When we talk about happiness, what we are talking about is a sense of subjective well-being that can be achieved with a sense of an overall life satisfaction plus the frequency with which we have positive feelings. So when we have a lot of positive feelings, a lot of the time, we have a general satisfaction with life we are living, we have a high subjective well-being. Therefore, we consider ourselves to be happy. And this is what we are talking about. So, one interesting question to pose is, can you control being more or less happy? In other words, is your level of happiness set by your nature and by circumstances to which you were born, or what you do with your life determines if your happiness level moves up or down? Well, the answer to this question contains good news and bad news. Beginning with the bad news, 50% of your happiness is impacted by something that is outside your control, which is your genes, your chemical balance, and your personality. If, for example, you have a neurotic personality, you are more likely than average to be negative and to often experience feelings such as anxiety, worrisome, fear, anger, frustration, and therefore are more likely to get into a depressing mood. So this will not help your happiness. Mind you that this doesn't mean that if you were born at the wrong side of the gene pool, you cannot be happy. It just means that it will be harder for you, so you will have to work extra. Another 10% of your happiness is impacted by the life circumstances that were dealt to you. So the family you were born, the access you have to education, if you went through a natural disaster, or if you were in an accident that resulted in chronic pain. So these are the bad news. Still, as you can see, the impact of circumstances on your happiness, it's much lower than one could ever imagine. This is due to our natural capability to adapt and adjust to circumstances, good or bad. This is called the hedonic adaptation effect. Now, the good news. And the good news is that a big chunk of your happiness is up to you. You have a direct impact on it, depending on how you perceive the environment and yourself and how you choose to act on it. So let's focus on this last 40% of the things that you can do. I've been studying what research tells about this, and I come to the conclusion that we already know a lot about what makes us happier or what can limit happiness. But the information is scattered on a lot of readings and research. So I developed a methodology that I call the happy methodology, which is an attempt to combine everything we know it can be done regarding happiness and deliver a method to work on it in an effective way. So this method can help anyone independently of their starting point to increase and boost their happiness level. This methodology was developed around 5 dimensions that we can work on in order to increase our happiness, and each of these dimensions is defined by each letter of the word happy. The dimensions are health, attention, purpose, people, and you. Let's go into a little bit more detail on each of these dimensions. Let's begin with health. So, health has to do with what most likely you already know because you've heard it from all of your life. You just perhaps weren't aware that this was not just about being healthier, but it was also about being happier. So if you sleep at least 8 hours a night, that will help you increase your happiness. If you exercise on average about 4 times a week, it will increase your happiness. If you eat a healthy diet, meaning don't eat refined sugar, don't eat lactose-based products, don't eat gluten-based products, and if additionally you include some fasting, meaning periods between 16 hours and 48 hours without eating, just drinking water, you'll have a huge boost on your health, and with that boost will come a boost in your happiness as well. And that is because being healthy boosts the level of what we call the happiness chemicals that flow in your system. We are talking about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Healthy people become happy people. Another thing is, make sure that you don't let any potential health condition become an issue in the future. So doing regular checkups so that you identify health problems early at their beginning is most recommended. Now, the second variable, attention. It has to do with your relation with time. Meaning, if you are a person that focuses too much attention on your past because you miss things that as they were, or if you regret things going in a particular direction, and you are always thinking, what if things had gone in a different way? That will only trap you in a state of mind that is conditioned by emotions related with sadness. And when you are under the influence of a negative emotion, it is very difficult for the obvious reasons that you feel happy. On the other hand, if you focus too much on the future, sure, you might get excited about the good things that might come, that might happen to you, but it also can trigger anxiety and fear. What if things that you've been wishing for too hard simply don't come true, don't happen? What if? And that will make you enter in a state of mind that is conditioned by a negative emotion based on fear. And therefore, it will become very difficult to feel happiness. So, one thing that leads to a happier life is if you are able to focus most of the time your mind in the present moment. Just taking in everything that is happening in that precise moment. And when I say the present moment, is not thinking about this month or this week or this day or even this hour. It certainly is not about making a list of the things you'll be doing after the lecture is done. I'm talking about this exact nanosecond. When you focus, when you are able to truly focus your mind in the absolute present moment. When you do this, you are living your life at its fullest, and this means that you are in a mindfulness state. When you are in a mindfulness state, that means that you are calmly acknowledging and accepting your own feelings, what is happening around you and with you. Not just what is happening in the outside world, but what is happening within you. Your feelings, your thoughts, your bodily sensations. And when you enter that state, you are behaving mindfully. The benefits of becoming mindful are quite impressive. It helps you quiet the mind, it gives you higher control over your emotions, it allows you to gain perspective, it frees you from fear, because if you are in the present moment and you're not in immediate danger, there's nothing to fear. It leads you to stress reduction. It allows you also to cherish each moment, and in a way you become more wholesome. So there are a lot of benefits of being able to achieve a state of mindfulness. Now, how can you do that? And I'm sorry to say, but just saying, okay, now I'm going to be in mindfulness, won't cut it. It doesn't work that way. Your attention needs to be trained in order to be fully present, because it is very, very easy to just slip away, chasing thoughts that pop up and are either related to the past or to the future. Because that's what your mind knows, to think in other things instead of the present moment. So, like any muscle in your body, you need to train it, and one way to train it is through meditation. Meditation is an excellent exercise that allows you to bring your mind into a state of mindfulness. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can begin practicing meditation. If you don't already do it, you can join groups, find a teacher, but you can also try it alone. You have loads and loads of apps nowadays that can help you in that quest. Having said that, meditation is not the only way to achieve a mindfulness state. You can also do it by resorting to playfulness. In other words, by laughing. By definition, if you are laughing, you are happy. It's impossible to be laughing without feeling, even briefly, happiness. So, just by exposing yourself to moments of playfulness and simply just let go and laugh, you are increasing the frequency of positive feelings. Also, it is focusing your mind in the present moment. Because when you are laughing because of something unexpected that just happened or just someone said, and it was in the present moment. The moment your mind wanders to another topic, you just stop laughing. So laughing is a very good way to achieve mindfulness. And there's an additional positive effect of laughing. It is extremely contagious. And if you don't believe me, just watch this video. Let's do the test. Well, I can't see you, but I'm assuming that you had the same reaction everyone else has to this video. You can help yourself from laughing. As I was saying, there's different ways to achieve a mindfulness state. Through meditation, through playfulness, even by eating and just being present and absorbing every sensation. So eating with all your senses. Also through contemplation and entering a state of awe. Also when you are writing about something or even when you are walking, you can enter a state of mindfulness. In fact, you can reach a mindfulness state by doing absolutely any task as long as you are completely, fully committed to it. In fact, when you reach a state of mindfulness at work, it is when you enter what we call a flow state, which is a high focus and concentration state that allows you to reach a high performance. The Americans call it being in the zone. And being able to enter the zone constantly, every time that a high performance is requested, is what allows people like Cristiano Ronaldo to become such amazing players. So, any professional that enables themselves to enter a flow state every time that they need to perform at their peak is what makes them high achievers and quite successful at what they do. So you can see how this dimension, there is a powerful link between happiness and performance. Although in this case, one is not the cause of the other, but both are the consequence of focusing your attention in the present moment. The next dimension, the first P, is about purpose. To illustrate this, allow me to tell you a story. It's a story, we don't know exactly where it happened and with whom, so it's more of a tale, and for argument's sake, let's say that this tale happened to Jesus. So Jesus was walking down a road when he encounters a group of men with long faces, and they were slowly, painfully breaking rocks. Jesus reached out one of them and he asks what they were doing. The man answers, "Well, I'm breaking rocks. It's for a construction over there." And he continues in a dull, slow rhythm, breaking the rocks. Jesus continues his walk, and in a little further, he finds another group of men. They are also breaking rocks, but this time they are very energetic. They are very committed to what they are doing, very serious, sticking to themselves, breaking rocks and moving them away. So Jesus approaches one of the men and asks him what he was doing. And he says, "I'm building a wall. I'm learning how to build stuff so I can become a mason." And with that brisk explanation, he goes off continuing with his work. Jesus continues his journey, and a little bit further, he finds another group of men also breaking rocks. But this time, they were the expression of pure joy. They were doing it in a very energetic way as well, but they were helping each other, they were enthusiastic, even singing. There was this vibrant energy that it was just a bliss to watch. So Jesus approaches one of the men and asks him what he was doing. And he says, "We are building a church so that people can be closer to God." What this story illustrates is the different approaches that one can have to work. You can see it just like a job, something you earn money so you can do the things that you really want to do, which is not what you are doing at work. Or you can see it as a career, meaning as a sort of a journey where your goal is to keep on moving up the ladders of that journey. Or you can see it as a calling, as something that you are meant to do so you can help other people achieving something that you believe to be important. What we know now for a fact is that people that fall into this last category, people that find meaning in their work, that describe it as a purpose, these people become deeply committed with life and the goals they are working at. They are optimistic towards the future, so they put a lot of energy in making things happen. They don't question much the value of their lives, so they don't get anxious or depressed about it. They actually deal better with death. They understand better the needs for cooperation, and they are more likely to express gratitude. And this is a big thing. We'll talk about this later. So having a purpose really sets your energy and focus working in your favor, and it allows you to feel joy more frequently and happy with how your life is turning out. So a good question that you should ask yourself is, have you found your purpose? Are you facing the work you do as a calling? Are you seeing just as a career or merely as a job? If the answer to this question is no, you haven't found your purpose yet, don't get frustrated because there is always time to find purpose, even if you are already 80 years old. I personally have changed my purpose 4 times already during my 48 years in this world. I'm going to give you an exercise you can do in order to help you with this task, if you will. But before that, let me warn you about a piece of advice that is often given and will not help you, which is do something you love. Well, doing something you love actually is not a good advice, and the reason why it is is because a task, a job, only becomes what you love after you have done it during time enough to give you a sense that you can master it. So you have to commit a lot of time and you have to do something and start seeing results. And if that thing you are going after involves quite challenging tasks, it might take a long time before you start loving it. So although this advice might have the heart in the right place, it really sets you on off track to find your purpose, because if you haven't dedicated enough time to something in order to do it properly and to get involved with it enough, you might not realize that you will in the future love doing that thing. So this is not the best advice. One better approach to this could be following the Japanese model of the Ikigai. Ikigai is about starting to make a list of the things that you are good at doing, then a list of the things that someone is willing to pay you for doing, a list of the things that you can do that the world needs or a specific target audience needs, and then a list of the things that give you energy, so that you even forget eating while you are doing it because you are so focused on it. Once you have the list of these 4 things, try to understand where they intersect, and most likely your Ikigai will pop up. So this is a good exercise you can do to find your purpose if you haven't found it already. The other P, the 4th dimension, is about people, meaning your relationship with other people. The research conducted for the longest period regarding the human condition is a study that took 75 years to complete, and it was about following the life of a group of people since they were very young kids to their death. From this study, 3 very interesting lessons came out about what contributes the most for people's happiness, and the 3 biggest lessons about happiness have to do with the following. The first one is about circumstances. The people that had a happy childhood were more likely to become happy adults. The second one had to do on how people deal with a very specific toxic pattern of thought, which we will discuss a little bit later, and it has to do with coping with stress. People that best handle stress were the ones that became happier. And finally, the third thing that contributed the most for someone's happiness was supporting relationships, was to have people in your life with whom you can be intimate with whom you don't feel the need to wear any protections, any armors, so you just can be yourself. People that are there for you in case you need. So having these kind of relationships in your life, whether it is with a spouse, with children, with parents, with friends, with siblings, with any other kind of relationship, those that have these kind of relationships tend to become happier people. In fact, when we distill what comes out, not just from this study, but from several other studies, we realize that when it comes to our relationship with other people, there are several aspects that contribute to our happiness. So the way we deal with all these aspects can either contribute for us to become happier or to become unhappier. So let's briefly go through each of them. So talking about kindness, people that tend to make small random acts of kindness toward other people, strangers even, tend to be happier. People that learn to deal with conflict in a way that not only diffuses aggression but also builds a platform for finding ways to achieve the goals of both sides are the ones that tend to be happier. People that have found that by cooperating with other people makes it easier to achieve whatever goals they have are people that become happier. People that exercise, just simply exercise empathy towards other people, that are able to put themselves in the shoes of other people and understand a little bit better the people that are surrounding them, are the ones who tend to become happier. People that have social connections, as I told earlier, and we are talking about social connections, not only just the deep supporting connections at the intimate level, but also connections that can help you have access to opportunities in life. So having all these levels of social connections, not necessarily in abundance, but at least with a strong bond at all levels, tend to become happier adults. People that feel compassion and sometimes act upon that compassion and do more than just simple acts of kindness, but invest their time and money to actually help in a more profound way other human beings, tend to become happier adults as well. And finally, last but not least, people that tend to operate in a psychologically safety environment tend to become happier. And what do I mean by this? Let me explain it by telling you another story. Back at the beginning of IBM, when Thomas Watson, its founder, was still in charge of the company, IBM was, as usual, always investing in all sorts of different projects. And one of those projects was a complete flop. Once the project was shut down, the head of the project wrote a letter of resignation and went upstairs to deliver it in person to Thomas Watson. So he reached Thomas Watson's office and he handed over his resignation letter. Thomas, with a baffled look, asked him, "What was that?" And he said, "It's my letter of resignation." To which Thomas replied, "The nerve! So just when we just invested $1 million in your education, you leave the company?" So when you operate in an environment where failure is not perceived as something that is just negative, but it is perceived as an opportunity to learn, to improve, to grow, an environment where that mindset is fostered through the entire team, where people see failing and making mistakes not as something that is demonized, but rather as something that is part of the process of learning. Those are the environments where not only people tend to be happier, in fact, it is also where creativity is fostered and where the best results are achieved. So, all of these dimensions about how you relate with other people, they can either boost or cripple your ability to be happy. Finally, we have the last dimension, which is you, the relationship you build with yourself. And this has to do with your view of the world and your role in it. It has to do with the fact that reality is just simply too complex for us to absorb it in all with our limited five senses. So instead of depicting reality as exactly it is, we use filters and assumptions about what matters to focus our senses on. And we build reality based on that limited information. So in fact, no one knows reality as it is. Everyone has simply a perception of reality, a perception that in most cases is built based on beliefs about which filters matter the most, and those filters are set up at the age of 7 years old through parent indoctrination. So they are not even your own filters. So how do you build a perception that helps you make the most of your life? Knowing this, how confident are you that you are building a perception that truly helps you to make the most of your life? Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you are not falling into a toxic pattern of thought that is completely crippling your ability to be happy. So first of all, you need to make sure that you eliminate toxic patterns of thought, and the most damaging ones are the patterns of perfectionism, for example, where you want everything to be just perfect. As you know, perfection is impossible to achieve. That it simply does not exist. So aiming and trying to go for something that is impossible will only make you unhappy. Then, if you tend to always compare what you are doing, what you have, what you are with other people, I mean, it can become exhausting, and the chances are there will always be someone that is better than you or have something better than you in some specific area. So comparison can be exhausting, can be excruciating, and it leads absolutely to nowhere. Materialism, focusing almost entirely in what you have, what you own, or what you are still missing. It always leads to unhappiness as well. Victimization, believing that you have very little or no power at all under the circumstances in your life. So when you let yourself become completely overwhelmed by circumstances, it can be something that is comforting in the sense that it takes away the responsibility to solve anything, but it has the negative effect of disempowering you completely. And therefore, when people feel powerless towards a situation, it becomes very difficult to be happy. When you fear from FOMO, fear of missing out, so when you are focusing on maximizing every single experience in your life, your holidays have to be the best holidays ever. If you go to a restaurant with a friend, it has to be the best meal ever. A concert has to be the best concert ever, and so on and so forth. So when you look at life this way, where every single moment needs to be the best moment ever, it becomes really exhausting, and it puts the expectations so high that it becomes simply impossible to satisfy. So you tend to suffer either from anxiety or from constant frustration. All this can lead to anxiety, and when anxiety is pushed to the extreme, to constant stress, it can lead to burnout. So if you feel everything in your life as menacing, as a threat of death, that obviously triggers all sorts of physical responses in your organism that will just tear you apart. So being able to first get conscious about which of these toxic patterns are undermining your ability to be happy at this moment is critical. Having that ability to become conscious about it and then dealing with them can go a long way in terms of working on your happiness level. Another aspect has to do whether you focus your energy and attention in your strengths or on your weaknesses. Are you one of those persons that is always thinking about what you could have done better and are always trying to improve where you are not as good as you see other people being? Or do you acknowledge where are your strengths and you focus in harvesting all its potential that can come from those strengths? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's good for you to acknowledge your weaknesses and try to improve them, as long as your main focus is not on that. Because if you are always focusing on what you didn't do so well, you are also undermining your self-esteem, because you are always focusing on what you did wrong. It's much better in terms of your happiness and also in terms of results in life, in obtaining goals, for example, if you focus in your strengths and build on it. So managing weaknesses and focusing on strengths is something that can bring a lot of positive results in your life. Another thing is this concept. Probably you heard this from your parents all your life, and if you have kids, you are passing it on to your kids, which is how special they are. Well, in fact, when you are telling a child that they are special, meaning they are different in a positive way from all other kids, you are crippling them, their ability to be happy. And the reason is this: if you truly believe that you are special, then you believe that you don't need to put much effort on things in order to get what you want. It will be easy for you because you are special. Everyone else has to work hard, but not you. And as we know, resilience is an effort is 90% of the success. So you are crippling the ability of your child to develop the abilities that will lead to success. Another thing is, if you believe that you are special, then you believe that your problems are also special. problems that no one else has, and therefore they are huge problems, and you are all alone facing those problems. When, in fact, when you realize that in almost 9 billion people in this planet, when you realize that there must be loads of other people that are going through exactly the same thing that you are, and therefore you can find support, you can realize that your problem is not that special, and it gives you this sense that there is a solution and you can do something about it. Finally, when you feel that you are special, you get this sense of entitlement. You get this feeling that you deserve something in life. You deserve some positive outcomes in your life. And because you don't control circumstances, you control how you deal and how you behave under circumstances, but you do not control circumstances, you are bound to get a slap in your face of life, and it can be a very hard slap. So understanding that you do not deserve everything good, either everything good or bad, or bad, for that matter, that happens in your life, that is a critical path in order for you to become more happy. Another thing that impacts your happiness has to do with how you talk with yourself. You know that inner voice that you have inside your head that is talking through situations you are going through and through your behaviors and through your thoughts and your emotion, and it's telling you things. That voice can be a powerful ally, or it can be an absolute devastating enemy. I mean, if you have a voice that is very harsh, very tough on you, that is always pointing out what you are doing wrong and is name-calling you and just undermining you, it will just take away your confidence and your self-esteem. So, learning how to develop a respectful, compassionate voice that is empathetic with what you are going through, that understands you, that allows you to become focused on the good things, on what you did good, and focus on the learning process and the growth process. It is much more helping voice that will also lead you to have a higher self-esteem and therefore become a happier person. And finally, we come up with the last aspect related with how you relate with yourself, and that has a huge impact on your happiness, which is gratitude. How grateful are you for all the things that happen in your life that were outside your control and have a positive impact on you? And being grateful for those things to be happening in your life can go a long way in your happiness. Let me illustrate by sharing with you a personal example about this. Ever since I read about how powerful can be gratitude in terms of increasing your happiness level, I've been helping my son to develop this attitude. So, since he was 5 years old, I have the mission of tucking him in bed, so every time we do it, we have this ritual, which is he tells me the 3 good things that happened to him that day that were outside his control, and I tell him my 3 things. And we've been doing this practically every single day for the past 6 years. At the beginning of this year, in the first day he went to school, he was really excited seeing all his friends again, getting back at school. So he was playing around in the yard, tremendously excited, running up and down everywhere. And in one of these runs, he fell, he didn't support himself well, so he broke his arm. So you can imagine, he spent the rest of the afternoon in the hospital, in pain, putting a cast in the arm. And so we left there relatively late. We arrived home, so he was really tired, and he was still with a little bit of pain. And so we went to dinner, and then he went to bed. As I was tucking him in bed, the first thing he told me was, "You know, Dad, despite the fact that today I broke my arm, it was an 85% good day." This is one of the positive side effects when you develop a grateful attitude. You tend to give relatively more importance to the positive things that happen in your life than the negative ones. So, from all the things that we've been talking through this lecture that is almost at its end, if there is one thing I would invite you to change in your life and to create a new habit, would be to start your gratitude journal. See for yourself how powerful it can be in changing your perception of reality. And with this, we ended up looking briefly at all the 5 dimensions that you need to work on in your life in order to increase your happiness. Just a final word. When you look at this perspective in the perspective of leadership and why this is important for leaders, it's that when you work these dimensions, taking into account not just your role as a leader, so you are not just working for yourself, but you are actively working it in allowing and giving the conditions for each member of your team to work these dimensions in their own lives, you are building a much more effective team that will be much likelier to achieve success. And this is why it's so important to actively include concerns about people's happiness when it comes to a leader's role. Before we go, just a quick gift. If you'd like to see where your happiness level is at this moment, just go to my website, miguelfigueiredo.com/tools, and there you'll find, among other things, the happiness assessment. Just do it and see your score. It will give you also loads of clues on what are the dimensions that you need to work on in order to become more happy. It will give you also loads of clues on what are the dimensions that you need to work on in order to be happier. And because most likely that list of things that you need to work on will not be that small, one thing that you need to understand is how do you make the changes happening in your life. Imagine you find out there are 7 aspects in your life that you need to change, 7 behaviors you have that you need to change. So how do you make all the changes happen in your life? One thing that you need to understand is if you try to make all these changes at the same time, you will not be able to make it. Let's imagine that you find out that there are 7 aspects in your life that you need to change, 7 behaviors that you need to make it different. How do you make sure that those changes actually stick in your life? Well, first of all, you need to understand that the fastest way to change an habit is if you replace the behavior you don't like for a new one and you turn that new behavior into a ritual. Turning a new behavior into a ritual, what it means is that you define what is the specific action that you need to implement in your life, what is the precise moment of the day or of the week that you will plan to implement the new behavior, and understanding what is the relationship between that behavior and the outcome that you wish to achieve. So you will only be able to substitute an habit for another one if you deeply believe that this is valuable to you. And then you make repetition of that new behavior something that is simple and easy to follow. And it will take about 30 days of repetition of the new behavior in order for that ritual to become an habit. That means that for 30 days, you need to think about it. You need to make sure that you follow through, that you do it, so that after 30 days, it becomes something that is just in your routine and you don't even need to think about it. You just do it. So your homework, if you decide to accept this, is to make a list of rituals that you want to install in order to become a happier person and work on maximum of 2 at a time. We are almost reaching the end of our talk. Before we go, let me just thank my good friends from Main Vision, without whom this talk wouldn't have been possible. All this set you see here was done digitally by their great team. If you are seeking to produce your next corporate event in this style, or if you are a keynote speaker that wants to bring greatness to your online events, I suggest you contact them. There's a link below. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure to be here with you. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you very much, and take care.